It was just past 10 on a cold November night when 13-year-old Lindsay Rimer stepped out into the darkness of Hebden Bridge. She had one simple task: buy cornflakes from the corner shop. The CCTV cameras captured her at 10:22 p.m., paying for her purchase with exact change. She tucked the coins safely in her pocket and walked back into the night. That was the last time anyone would see Lindsay alive. 5 months later, canal workers made a discovery that would haunt this quiet Yorkshire town forever. Lindsay's body was found submerged in the Rochdale Canal, weighted down with concrete. Still wearing the exact same clothes from that November evening, the change from the cornflakes was still in her pocket. 30 years have passed since that night, and her case remains one of Britain's most baffling unsolved cases. Someone in Hebden Bridge knows what happened to Lindsay Rimer. Someone has been keeping that secret for 3 decades. Tonight, we're going to uncover every detail of her story. If you want to see justice for Lindsay and cases like hers, please subscribe and hit that notification bell. Lindsay Rimer was everything you'd expect from a 13-year-old girl in 1994. She lived with her family on Cambridge Street in Hebden Bridge, a picturesque market town nestled in the Calder Valley of West Yorkshire. The cobblestone streets and Victorian architecture made it feel like the kind of place where nothing truly terrible could happen. Lindsay was independent for her age, comfortable walking the familiar streets she'd known her entire life. She had her routines, her favorite spots, her sense of freedom that small-town life afforded. Hebden Bridge was the type of community where neighbors knew each other, where teenagers could walk to the shops after dark without their parents losing sleep. It was a place where parents felt safe, letting their children explore, where trust was woven into the fabric of daily life. But on that November night in 1994, that sense of safety would be shattered forever. Monday, November 7th, 1994, started like any ordinary evening for the Rimer family. Lindsay's mother, Geraldine, was working her shift at the Shoulder of Mutton pub, just a short walk from their home on Cambridge Street. The autumn air carried that crisp bite that signaled winter's approach, and darkness had already settled over Hebden Bridge by the time Lindsay decided she needed cornflakes for breakfast. It was past 10 o'clock when Lindsay made her way through the quiet streets toward the Spar convenience store on Crown Street. The shop's warm light cut through the November darkness as she pushed through the familiar glass doors. At exactly 10:22 p.m., the store's security camera captured Lindsay at the checkout counter, purchasing a packet of cornflakes. She paid with exact change, the coins clinking as she counted them out. The cashier would later remember her as polite and unremarkable, just another teenage customer on a routine errand. After leaving the Spar, Lindsay made a brief stop at the Shoulder of Mutton to see her mother. It was a quick visit, nothing unusual, just a daughter checking in before heading home. Geraldine would replay this moment countless times in the years that followed, wondering if she should have insisted Lindsay stay, wondering if those few minutes of conversation would be their last. Lindsay left the pub and stepped back into the night, cornflakes in hand, change safely tucked in her pocket. She should have been home within minutes. Cambridge Street was less than a 10-minute walk away, but somewhere between the warm glow of the pub and her front door, Lindsay Rimer vanished without a trace. There was one unconfirmed sighting that night, a witness who claimed to see a girl matching Lindsay's description near the bus stop at Memorial Gardens. If true, it would have been around 10:45 p.m., just 23 minutes after she left the shop. But this sighting was never verified, leaving investigators with more questions than answers. What happened in those crucial minutes after Lindsay left the pub? Who did she encounter in the darkness of Hebden Bridge? The town that had felt so safe, so familiar, suddenly seemed full of shadows and secrets. What do you think happened to Lindsay that night? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to like this video if you want to see more unsolved cases. When Lindsay failed to return home that night, her family's concern quickly escalated to panic. This wasn't like Lindsay. She was responsible, predictable, someone who kept her promises and followed her routines. By morning, when her bed remained empty and untouched, the Rimer family knew something was terribly wrong. West Yorkshire police launched an immediate search operation, treating Lindsay's disappearance as high priority from the very beginning. The investigation began with the basics, retracing Lindsay's last known movements, interviewing witnesses, and analyzing the security footage from the Spar shop. The grainy CCTV images showed a normal teenage girl making a routine purchase. Nothing unusual in her behavior or appearance. Police canvassed the route between the shop and her home, speaking to anyone who might have been in the area that Monday night. The unconfirmed sighting near Memorial Gardens became a crucial piece of the puzzle, though investigators could never definitively prove it was Lindsay. Search teams combed through Hebden Bridge and the surrounding countryside. They checked abandoned buildings, wooded areas, and every possible location where a missing teenager might be found. The community rallied together, organizing volunteer search parties and distributing missing person flyers throughout the valley. Lindsay's photograph appeared in local newspapers and on television appeals, her young face becoming painfully familiar to everyone in West Yorkshire. As days turned into weeks, the investigation expanded. Police began exploring the possibility that Lindsay knew her abductor, someone she might have willingly approached or gotten into a vehicle with. This theory suggested local knowledge, someone familiar with the area who could navigate the streets of Hebden Bridge in the dark. Investigators developed an early profile of their suspect, likely a male in his late teens or early 20s, someone with access to a vehicle, someone who blended into the local community. One significant lead emerged in the form of a stolen red Honda Civic. Around the time of Lindsay's disappearance, witnesses reported seeing this vehicle driven by a bearded man who had been approaching teenage girls in the area. The connection seemed promising. A predator, targeting young women, operating in the exact time frame when Lindsay vanished. Police traced the vehicle and its driver, but when they found him, he had a solid alibi for the night in question. Another lead had gone cold. As winter deepened and 1994 turned to 1995, the active search for Lindsay began to wind down, but her family never stopped hoping, never stopped believing that answers would eventually come. Police maintained the case as an active investigation, following up on tips and re-examining evidence as new technologies became available. So far, police had no leads, no motive, and no suspect. Yet the town wasn't resting easy. The question that haunted everyone remained the same. Where was Lindsay Jo Rimer? Spring arrived in Hebden Bridge in 1995, bringing with it longer days and the promise of renewal. But on Wednesday, April 12th, any hope that Lindsay might still be alive was extinguished forever. Two canal workers were conducting routine maintenance along the Rochdale Canal when they spotted something unusual in the water near Rawdon Mill Lock, approximately 1 mile from the center of town. What they found would send shockwaves through the community that had spent 5 months hoping and praying for Lindsay's safe return. Her body was discovered submerged in the canal, weighted down with a large concrete boulder. The location was secluded, accessible by footpath, but far enough from the main roads to avoid casual detection. Someone had chosen this spot deliberately, someone who knew the area well enough to find a place where a body might remain hidden for months. The discovery brought both devastating closure and new mysteries. Lindsay was still wearing the exact same clothes she had on the night she disappeared. The same jacket, the same jeans, the same shoes. Most remarkably, the change from her cornflakes purchase was still in her pocket. The coins she had counted out at the Spar shop 5 months earlier. This detail would puzzle investigators for years to come. Why would someone go through the effort of weighing down a body but leave such obvious evidence intact? The post-mortem examination revealed that Lindsay had lost her life through strangulation, but there was no evidence of sexual assault. This finding significantly altered the direction of the investigation. The crime didn't appear to be motivated by sexual violence, which had been one of the primary theories during the initial missing person investigation. Instead, investigators were looking at something else entirely. But what? The location of Lindsay's body raised even more questions. How had her abductor transported her to such a secluded spot? The canal path wasn't easily accessible by vehicle, suggesting either local knowledge of alternative routes or the physical capability to carry a body a significant distance. The concrete boulder used to weigh her down wasn't something that could be easily transported or positioned without planning and preparation. But perhaps the most chilling revelation was yet to come. Forensic examination would eventually reveal evidence that would change the entire case. Decades later, for more than 20 years, Lindsay Jo Rimer's case remained frustratingly cold, despite extensive investigations, multiple appeals, and the dedicated efforts of West Yorkshire police. Her killer remained at large. Her family lived with the constant ache of unanswered questions, knowing that somewhere in their community, someone was walking free with the knowledge of what happened that November night. Then, in 2016, a breakthrough finally came through advances in forensic science. DNA analysis techniques that hadn't existed in 1994 were applied to evidence from Lindsay's case, and investigators were able to develop a genetic profile connected to her demise. This wasn't just any DNA. It was evidence that could potentially identify her killer after more than 2 decades of mystery. The DNA breakthrough led to immediate action. In 2016, police arrested a man in connection with Lindsay's case, raising hopes that justice might finally be served. The arrest sent ripples through Hebden Bridge, a community that had lived with this unsolved tragedy for over 20 years. But their hopes were short-lived. After thorough investigation, the man was released without charge. The DNA evidence, while significant, wasn't enough to secure a conviction. A year later, in 2017, a second arrest was made. Once again, the community held its breath, wondering if this would be the moment when Lindsay's killer would finally face justice. But like the previous arrest, this too resulted in the suspect being released without charge. The DNA profile remained tantalizing, close to solving the case, yet somehow just out of reach. Today, 30 years after that November night, Lindsay Jo Rimer's case remains officially unsolved. The DNA evidence still exists, still holds the potential to identify her killer, but the right match has yet to be found. West Yorkshire police continue to appeal for information, believing that someone in the local community holds the key to finally solving this decades-old mystery. Lindsay Jo Rimer should be 43 years old today. She should have graduated, found her path in life, maybe started a family of her own. Instead, she remains forever 13, frozen in time on that November night when she walked out to buy cornflakes and never came home. Her story has become part of Hebden Bridge's history, a reminder that even in the safest communities, darkness can strike without warning. The DNA evidence means that Lindsay's killer left traces of themselves behind, scientific proof of their involvement that time cannot erase. Somewhere, someone knows what happened on November 7th, 1994. Someone has carried that secret for 30 years, watching as a family grieved, as a community lost its innocence, as investigators dedicated their careers to finding answers that remained just out of reach. But DNA doesn't lie, and science doesn't forget. The evidence is waiting, patient and persistent, for the moment when technology or testimony finally reveals the truth. Lindsay's story isn't over, not until justice is served, not until her family has the answers they've been seeking for 3 decades. Some say the killer is still out there, walking the same streets where Lindsay took her final steps. Others believe that justice, though delayed, will eventually find its way to the truth. What do you think happened to Lindsay Jo Rimer? If you want to see more unsolved cases like this one brought to light, subscribe to our channel and click the notification bell. And check out our video on another Yorkshire mystery that's haunted investigators for decades.